You know, kids, I've been recording this introduction for nearly half an hour and it just ain't working for me, man. But I got some cool stuff to talk about and it's all waiting for you. Where? On the other side. Hello, you're listening to the John Huff Podcast. Oh, yay. So the other night, I'm sitting in bed, and I got a book in front of me, like a book. You remember books, kids? Like the real hard copy, hold it in your hand book, right? And I'm reading before bed, because apparently that's a good time to read, all right? And I'm reading Being Ram Dass. And I'll talk a little bit more about Ram Dass. I know I've mentioned Ram Dass in the past. And so I'm reading this memoir, Being Ram Dass, right? And I come to the section, one of the multiple sections you find in pretty much every memoir, of photos, right? And I turn the page and I sees one. And I'd like to get a closer look at it. It's a little bit fuzzy. And so I find myself reaching down with my hand, and I put my fingers on the picture and try to expand it. Have you had this experience, kids? Have you become so hooked on your phone? Has your phone become so much a part of your life that you're actually reaching down in a book and trying to expand the dang photo with your fingers? I literally did that. Now, I can make the claim that it was late in the day and I was a bit tired. You know, you can try to excuse that away. You can put that down to a frame of mind. But ultimately, what happened was my hands now are so accustomed and my brain so accustomed to functioning via phone that the default setting now is just to do that. You know, and so I found myself reaching down, trying to expand a physical picture with my fingers. And that was maybe a turning point, okay? It became a thing where I started to become so aware of how phony I am. That's Phoney, all right? Should we even call these phones anymore? We don't. We call them devices now, you know? Because, well, yeah, functionally it's a phone, and that's what it's supposed to be, and it's an iPhone. How much phoning are we doing really, you know? This is becoming like an extension of ourselves. This is the beginning of cyborgs, man, and we know it's coming. We know that implants exist. We know that soon they'll be able to put them in your eye. Or hook them up to your brain, and you'll no longer carry the freaking phone around. There'll just be like a screen in your glasses, and all the stuff will happen via your mind. And this is where we become cyborgs, okay? You know, I've read futurists, I've read spiritual futurists who say that the next phase of evolution of the human being is the merge with technology, man. And so your spinal cord will become like fiber optic, something like that. You know, we're going to be, fundamentally wired into ourselves and to each other. And there'll be this whole new order of intelligence, and people won't wear out because all their parts will be bionic. And that's where it's going. And it begins with me trying to reach down and expand a photograph in my dang book. And then I started, I've noticed this for a long time, okay? This is not new. I've noticed my addiction to the phone, okay? Like a rat with the pellets. Click the lever, get a pellet. The pellet is dopamine, man, and I'm, poking that lever all the freaking time. Go to Instagram and just scroll through nothing, looking for nothing. You know? My attention span is like a freaking gnat now. Like a ferret, just like all over the place. I cannot focus for longer than a few seconds before I gotta reach for the dang phone. I watch a football match on the TV. Now, the phone serves two purposes during the football match. One, it's something that I can follow the Twitter and get the reactions from people as Arsenal shoots themselves in the foot. But it's also a good thing to throw at the television, okay? So the phone has a functional, practical purpose, right? But I noticed that I can't put the dang thing down for 45 minutes and just watch the game. Can't do it. It's become so ubiquitous. It's become so much a part of my life to have the freaking phone in my hand, accessing some nothingness in order to release a dopamine shot every 10 seconds. And they set them up to be this way, man. They have designed the apps to be addictive, okay? That's why the little bells go off, and that's why the notifications is like, ooh, dopamine, 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 man. And it works. And it's worked on me. And I'm not nearly as bad as a lot of people. And I fear for the kids who grow up and who are growing up in this, 100% wired world. So there are kids out there right now who know, not just kids, there are adults who know utterly nothing different than phone. Phone is life. Phone is extension of life, Phone is conduit of life. And I cannot imagine the attention spans that these kids must have. They're wired up on bells and whistles 100% all the freaking time. There's an app for nature now. And I'm not turning into one of those get off my lawn people. I'm just observing my own experience of this. And then I'm extrapolating. One of the things that experience in adulthood gives you is the ability to draw lines, okay? Between one point and another. And I'm looking back at people much younger than me and imagining the lines. And I don't know, man, and I don't think anybody cares. We don't do cursive writing anymore. We have abandoned, this is evolution, man. This is cultural, this is social evolution. So we abandon things just on the assumption that how it is now is the way it's going and the way it will always be. So if the world collapses and we go off the grid, and your cell phone becomes nothing more than a doorstop paperweight or weapon to throw, I don't know. Will people just self-destruct? Or are we all just going to wire it in like nanotech and we'll just become like robots? We'll become cyborgs. And I don't even know why I'm talking about that except to say it freaked me out that I tried to expand a photograph on a book with my fingers. And what do I say about Ram Dass? Reading it all. I haven't done a lot of reading lately. It's become somewhat more difficult for me to do that. It's partly a time thing, even though I got nothing to do. And it's partly maybe an attention thing, so I'm making a point of reading. And I got lucky because some books came out in the past year or so that I wanted to look at, and the Ram Dass book is one of them. And I've been racking my brain thinking about what am I going to say about Ram Dass here. And I'm not really sure. I just finished the book. It's a memoir. It was completed just before Ram Dass left this earthly coil in December of 2019. And I've talked a bit about Ram Dass, and I don't know how much that freaks you out, okay? Now, Ram Dass was born Richard Alpert, okay? He's an American. He was a professor of psychology when it was not super cool to become a professor of psychology back in the 60s. And Richard Alpert, Dr. Richard Alpert, was a very famous man in those days as part of the counterculture movement. Now, he and his pal Timothy Leary were pioneers in the research of psychedelics, okay? Richard Alpert, Timothy Leary, psilocybin, and then LSD, and exploring the ability of these chemicals, these drugs, some of them natural, psilocybin coming from mushrooms, to expand and expose the user to consciousness, okay? And back in the 60s, this stuff wasn't illegal. It was cutting edge. It's like mind-altering. What can we access via these chemicals? Some people just like to get high. Some people freaked out, For Richard Alpert, it was a game of consciousness, trying to look beyond what we can see, okay? Spirituality's been doing this for thousands of years. LSD is just a quicker ride, I suppose, And so they were the pioneers of this. They were studying this at Harvard. They were conducting research and experiments, legit scientific stuff. And they became kind of figureheads of the 60s counterculture movement, the hippies and all that stuff. And that was Dr. Richard Alpert. Now, an interesting thing happened, all right? Dr. Richard Alpert accompanied a pal of his to India. And I forget all of the details of that. But what happened unexpectedly is that Dr. Alpert came in contact with a guru who he called, and I suppose everybody called, Maharaji, okay? Now, you can think what you like about gurus, all right? I'm not here to try to sell you on anything. I'm just telling you what happened. And there was something effective about Maharaji, okay? And Dr. Richard Alpert found in him something that he had been missing. This spiritual grounding, right? These levels of consciousness that he had been trying to access through psychedelics had no effect. He gave the drugs to Maharaji in insane doses, man, that would explode a normal person's head. And Maharaji didn't even blink. This guy was plugged into a level of consciousness beyond what chemicals could access, man. And for a dude like Richard Alpert, looking to explore and experience and understand consciousness at those levels, this was the mother lode, man. And so he stayed in India, studying, serving, learning under Maharaji, right? And he became a yogi, and he learned to meditate, and he became this spiritual person in the Hindu tradition, all right? With some crossover into the Tao and Buddhism, and all of this stuff weaves together, man. I'm not trying to get all trippy on you, okay? But this is what happened to the guy. And after a certain period of time, living in poverty, studying under Maharaji, becoming a yogi, Maharaji renames Richard Alpert Ram Dass, okay? Servant of God, servant of Ram. And he sends Ram Dass back to America to kind of spread the word, okay? And so the man who went away as Dr. Richard Alpert returns, wearing like white dresses and no shoes, with a big beard. He's Ram Dass, and he's a spiritual teacher. And he begins to hip people in the West more completely to ancient Eastern religious, metaphysical consciousness practices like meditation, like yoga, like beginning to understand love and consciousness in a way that hadn't really been popularized in the West yet. And so he became kind of a missionary in reverse, But the great thing about Ram Dass is that he remained, to a certain extent in personality, Richard Alpert, Your personality is your personality, kids. Your perspective can change. Your understanding of the universe can change. But he remained an incredibly funny and articulate and charming and whimsical man, And he became a great ambassador because he could speak so well. And people would come from miles around to hear Ram Dass speak. And he founded a lot of these kind of movements to serve people, particularly who were dying. Death care, understanding death in a different kind of way than the West understands it. And, his work fueled by this extreme compassion for humanity that maybe he hadn't had before, And Ram Dass became this spiritual icon, and to a certain extent, a cultural icon, all the way up and beyond the point in the late 90s where he had a stroke. And he was in his late 60s at that point, very dynamic, had this speaking life going, had this writing life going. And all of a sudden got, as he said, stroked. Left him in a wheelchair, took away that gift he had of loquation. Is that a word? My gift of loquation's not quite as good as Ram Dass's was, all right. Took away his ability to speak so well. Developed aphasia, spoke very haltingly, had trouble finding the right words, and it's all interesting in the memoir how he talks about this stripping away of ego, man. And part of the Ram Dass ego, part of the Ram Dass personality was this ability to speak and be really funny and really effective and make people understand concepts that are way beyond simple understanding, all right? Stroke took that away. Stroke took away a lot of the kind of presentation of Ram Dass. And this is all very fascinating if, like me, you're on a spirit quest, kids, okay? And Ram Dass was the voice of my troubles in the summertime when the COVID anxiety was hitting, and I was beginning to have to reframe life as I knew it, because life as I was living it was stressing me out, man. And so I'm building my little flagstone path, and I got my phone beside me. Of course, the phone. Phones can be used for good things, kids, including podcasts. And I was listening to the Ram Dass Here and Now podcast, which is mostly just audio of Ram Dass's lectures. And that was a bomb. That was soothing, kids. There is power in words. There is power in voices, all right? And I was listening to the Ram Dass voice, and that pulled me through, not just his wisdom, but the actual power that is in his voice, in his words. Kept me going, man. And I don't remember how I discovered Ram Dass. When you're on a spiritual kind of path, which I'm trying to be, the teachers appear, man. I don't remember how I found them. I don't remember how I found Jeff Thompson, although it was through the martial arts in some way. And, I've needed Ram Dass, and reading his book has been wonderful. And, there's maybe a kind of a hidden message in the book even from Ram Dass. Like, dude, you're trying to open pictures with your fingers in my book. Maybe it's time to reframe your relationship with your phone. But I tell you that story because mostly I'm on about synchronicity these days, all right? And I've talked about recent episode, Opportunity Knocks, how things kind of fall into place, man, how synchronicities happen. And I'm thinking of Ram Dass as I'm reading his book, and he's like, he goes to India as a person, tags along. He's not looking for a guru, and yet life lands him in the circumstance that utterly changes him. To the point of his freaking identity, man. It changed his name to meet Maharaji, And I'm running across this a lot these days. Before I read the Ram Dass book, I read McConaughey's book, all right? Now, if you're a consumer of podcasts at all, you know about McConaughey's book, right? Green Lights. And that's all about McConaughey's life and career. It's also a memoir. And I enjoyed it, cool. But I sneered a little bit at the beginning because I don't want to give away the whole freaking book, but we know that Matthew McConaughey's first kind of role, he burst onto the scene through Dazed and Confused, right? Playing Wooderson. Do you know the story of how he got that freaking role? This blew my freaking mind, and I made a face because, I was still too egoic when I read it. So Matthew McConaughey is in university. He's studying film, had switched his major into film, and he had begun kind of putting out reels and stuff, like trying to get acting gigs, that kind of stuff, working as a waiter on the weekends, And he goes to the bar at a hotel where his friend is tending bar, takes his girlfriend because his friend will give him freebies, man. So he goes on like a Friday night or a Saturday night to the bar to hang out where his buddy will give him freebies. So they're sitting at the bar, and his buddy says, hey, you see that guy sitting on the corner, down by himself on the corner of the bar, older guy? McConaughey says, yeah. He says, that dude's in town making a movie. You should go talk to him. So McConaughey strikes up a conversation with this guy, who turns out to be the guy making Dazed and Confused. And the guy says to McConaughey, after a couple drinks, McConaughey's a personable guy, says, why don't you come by and read for this part? So McConaughey says, all right. Goes to read for the part, which turns into Wooderson. He gets the part, turns up on set, and Matthew McConaughey is born. Why? Because he happened to take his girlfriend that night for free drinks at the hotel where his friend is tending bar. Holy synchronicities, man, and I pulled a face about that initially, because I'm a neophyte, kid. I'm the beginning man, all right? And I pulled a face because I thought, oh, of course, fell ass backwards into Wooderson, and now he's Matthew McConaughey. And that's the ego's reaction, all right? Ram Dass would smile. But the higher self looks at that and says, wow, look at the synchronicity. Look at the opportunities that come, man. And McConaughey still had to make the effort to talk to that guy. McConaughey still had to show up on set. McConaughey still had to read and get the part. And then when he got the part, he crushed it, and he added to it. And he was so good at it that they added more Wooderson to the film just to get McConaughey in it, all right? Opportunity knocks, he had to be ready, and he had to deliver. And he had to have the confidence, the courage, the charisma to step up and do it, all right? So kudos to McConaughey, good for him. And the same thing as Ram Dass. He just shows up in India and then all of a sudden his life has changed, literally changed forever, right down to his name. And this week I'm poking around on the interwebs and I see an interview with Terry Lewis. Do you know Terry Lewis? The singer of the 80s hard rock band XYZ. Now, I was not huge into XYZ, okay? There were just too many bands, man. I didn't get around to all of them. But I knew XYZ, and they did pretty well. And do you know the story of them getting signed, man? This literally just came to me yesterday, I think. This is Saturday morning, kids. Not recording Sunday after the Arsenal versus Spurs game, because I don't think the censors will allow. Yesterday, I'm reading around, there's an article, an interview on Sleaze Rocks, good old Sleaze Rocks, with Terry Lewis. Now, I don't even follow XYZ. I would not go seeking out an interview with Terry Lewis, all right? This one comes across my screen. And in it, he tells the story of how XYZ got signed. Now, this band started initially in like 1980, and Lewis came along in like 82, 83. So they've been around a long freaking time, all right? Making music, getting demos done, trying to get signed, getting turned down by freaking everyone, man. Nobody wanted XYZ, right? So then one day, their pal is riding his motorcycle down the strip, man. Down the strip in Hollywood, the Sunset Strip, baby, down at the Whiskey. And the dude drops a glove, okay? Riding his motorcycle, drops a glove. Now, there's two girls in a car behind him. They picks up the glove. And at the next stoplight, they catch up to the dude on the motorcycle. They're like, hey man, you dropped your glove. Here it is. Oh, thank you. And they strikes up a conversation, and it turns out one of the girls is an intern at Enigma Records, okay? That name will perk up the ears of all the Stryper fans out there, because they were on Enigma Records at one point, back in the heyday. So the dude on the motorcycle says to the girl from Enigma, hey, you got to hear my friend's demo tape. How many record company employees cringe to hear those words, man? Nobody wants the demo tape, I don't think, man. But you got to hear my friend's demo tape. All right. So then they run to the payphone and they call up a guy who's got the tape and says, bring this down right now. And so he does, and he gives it to the girl, and the girl dutifully takes it away and listens to it. And pushes it onto the desk of the head of Enigma Records, and XYZ gets signed. Synchronicities, man. It's freaking amazing. McConaughey turns up at the bar for free drinks, meets the guy that launches his whole freaking career. Dude riding his motorcycle drops a glove, and his friend's band gets signed to Enigma Records. Ram Dass shows up in India, meets someone he wasn't even looking for that utterly changes his life and gives him purpose. Isn't it cool? Isn't it freaking cool, kids? And I've seen it, to lesser degrees in my own life. And I suppose the message is just keep your eyes open, okay? Hold the faith, man. Keep the faith. You got a thing you want, or in, Richard Alpert's case, not even a thing you wanted, really. Was looking for answers, found them. Answers came to him. So just keep yourself open, kids. You never know what weird things may weave together and suddenly land you with an opportunity or in a place that you did not expect. And who knows what may happen. That's my message today, kids. Who knows what may happen, but you got to hold on. You got to stay in the game. You got to keep yourself open to this possibility of synchronicities, all right? Wasn't expecting to say all that. But, you know, sometimes it just comes out of you, man, and all of a sudden you got yourself 23, 24, 25 minutes of stuff you weren't expecting to say. And so I'm going to ditch some of the stuff I was expecting to say because I want to talk to you about Crown Lands, all right? Do all you rock and rollers know Crown Lands? If you're an Ontario person, you probably do. If you exist beyond, or if you're one of the older people who maybe isn't checking out new music, you might not know Crown Lands, but you should, all right? Now, Crown Lands is a duo from here in Ontario, drummer and a guitar player who's got more stuff going on with his guitar scene than I think anybody I've ever seen in my life. Gotta fill a lot of space. The guitar player is Kevin. Also plays keyboards with his feet. Now, how cool is that? And the drummer and singer is Cody. And I feel like I'm on a first-name basis with the cats because I played with them, all right? Back in the day, once upon a time, Hiroshima Hearts trundled down to Toronto, Canada, to play a Canadian Music Week showcase. If you don't know Canadian Music Week, that is the kind of annual industry festival here in Canada, where bands come from miles around, if they get accepted, to showcase, because they tell you that the entire Canadian music industry is there and you might just get signed, man. Never once I think I've played CMW 4 times with different acts. Never met an executive along the way. Never met one, man. They're elusive, you know. You have to turn up at just the right bar for free drinks to find one. Anyways, Hearts trundles down to Toronto because we got accepted to play Canadian Music Week, and that's a feather in the cap. And on the bill at the Bovine that night was a great freaking bill, man. It was Hearts, you know, and that is what it is. It was this cool band from the prairies called Moontan. Really freaky band with painted faces and stuff. Really cool. And it was Crown Lands, this duo that we didn't know, and the Cola Heads. And the fun thing about the Cola Heads is that Jackie from the Balconies was initially in the Cola Heads, and I thought Jackie's going to be playing, but she wasn't in the band at that time. Too bad. And then this really terrific band from LA called Hammered Satin, all right? Hammered Satin is a great freaking band and a ton of fun. They got the whole 70s glam thing going hard, right? And they were such a freaking great, fun band to watch, Hammered Satin. Really, really great people, too, you know? Fun band, super cool, and Hearts were stoked and honored to be on this bill. We get down to the Bovine, which is a bizarre and really cool little club in Toronto. And it's packed out, man. It's so hit and miss. You know, you get a CMW showcase, right? And you kind of hope there's like a local who's on the bill who's going to pull a crowd, right? Because there's shows happening all over the city. And some of them are like big shows, right? At big venues, and I don't know, like City and Color or something will be headlining. And you know, you'd like to get that show, but we don't get that show because we're an indie band, you know. But we get a cool club showcase. But you hope, because you don't know. Because if there's nobody on the bill that people want to see or that they've heard of, or it's not at a venue that people want to go to, you might not catch a crowd. So it's really hit and miss. But, you know, Hearts arrives at the Bovine, and it's packed out. It's not a huge club, but packed out is packed out, all right. And before we played, this duo went up called Crown Lands that we didn't know, and they played. And we stood there and we went, oh, this band is good, man. These two cats, something's going on here. You could recognize right away, and I'm not just saying that in retrospect to be cool. You could recognize right away that there was something going on with this band, Crown Lands. First of all, the most hair per capita of any band I've ever seen. And I came up in the 80s, man. For two guys, pound for pound, the most volume of hair I've ever seen. And I approve of that. And it can be cool to see a two-piece. And I know that became kind of a cliche for a while, you know, royal blood and that kind of stuff. And like the two-piece thing became kind of a genre all on its own. But they were at the forefront. This is like 4 or 5 years ago. And they went up and played, and it's just, you just kind of know that dudes have something, man. It's not just that it was a cool setup and they had lots of hair. Like, the cats could play, and the songs were killing. They were heavy, you know. Kevin's got so much going on at his feet to make all of the sounds, bass and guitar and the keyboard thing, and he's got like octaves happening to fill out that space, man. And then Cody's voice is bananas. You're like, what? You know, this dude, really great drummer too, do not get me wrong, but then this voice comes out of him and it's like, there's something going on here. You could just tell there's something going on, man. And so they played, and that was great. And then Hearts went up and we played our set, and people seemed to like it, and we had a great freaking time. It was a highlight, you know, in my time in the band that I miss, you know. It was cool, great night, and we got introduced to Crownlands and Hammered Satin, and we loved Hammered Satin. And so we went on from there, and, you know, we stayed in touch. I think Jen stayed in touch with Crownlands, you know. Super humble guys, very quiet guys, very unassuming. Let the music do the talking, man. And so we stayed in touch with them, and then there was some back and forth, I think, at a certain point about maybe doing shows together, something like that. It never quite came together. It might have, and maybe it still will. But something happened along the way whereby Crownlands blew up. You know, from the same stage with us to we're going on tour with Coheed and Cambria right now. What? Or we're going on tour in the States for a run of dates with Primus. What? Or we're opening for Jack White across Canada. All this began to happen. Crownlands became a thing, man. And I want to say they signed to Universal. I could be wrong about that, but I don't know. They blew up. They blew up in as much as you can blow up these days, you know, being a two-piece rock and roll band. And I think rock and roll is making a comeback, man. I think it's beginning to happen. And so Crownlands started getting all of these great tours, like nuts tours, man. Huge tours. And playing like big festivals, like, you know, the posters come out, right? And they list the headliners, and then underneath there's a bunch of bands. And so you would begin to find the name Crownlands in there, and then the big names at the top were like Guns N' Roses. Big festival gigs these guys were getting, and still are getting, man. And bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and stuff just blowing up. And good on Crownlands, man, because you look at that from where I'm sitting, or where Hearts is sitting at the time, and you're like, we're on the same stage. We're on the same bill as those guys. It's not like we played the same stage as Crownlands. Like we played at 11 o'clock that morning and Crownlands headlined at 11 that night. It's not the same thing, man. Like we were on the same dang ticket. And so you can look at that and say, well, it's possible. It's still possible for it to happen, man. And, you know, COVID put the kibosh on that for a lot of people, a lot of bands. But it's cool when you're kind of roughly at the same level, and then you watch a band surge and you watch a band blow up. That can be inspiring, man, and it is. Even for me, sitting here in, you know, deep in middle age, you kind of look at that and go, well, it's possible, man. And it's only possible if you're good enough. And they are. Crownlands is freaking great. Write great songs and play them great. And things come together, and you need help, and you need management, and you need things to come together, but things do begin to come together at times. And you watch it, and it's freaking cool, and Crownlands is great. And why am I talking about them now? I'm talking about them now because Crownlands released a couple of cool new tunes this week, all right? Now, these guys are unabashed and unashamed Rush fans, okay? And they've been covering things like Working Men in their shows for a long time. And when Cody opens his mouth, not everybody can do Geddy Lee, man. Whether you like Geddy's voice or not everybody can pull that off. And freaking Crownlands can, and Cody can, while playing the Neil Peart drum parts. Now, how are you going to top that? I can't do either. I can't do Geddy's voice, and I can't do Neil's drums, let alone at the same time, all right? So they released a couple tunes this week that were Rush tributes, not Rush covers, but Rush tributes, songs that they wrote that are a tribute to the Rush sound, the way Rush writes, the way Rush is, and it's their tribute, I guess, kind of post-Neil. Rush is, to a certain extent, over. And this is their tribute to them, and they released these 2 tracks, all right? One is called Context, Fearless Part 1, and this is like a 7-minute, you turn it on and you listen, and if you just skip around the tune, you're like, this is Rush. This is Rush, man. It sounds like Rush. It's got the same kind of vibe and sections. I played it for my friend Mark, who's a big Rush guy, and he's like, oh, this could have come directly off of Caress of Steel. And I'm not going to argue with him because I'm not qualified enough as a Rush person to say so. But the guitar sounds like Alex Lifeson when it needs to. And the voice sounds like Geddy because Cody can sound like Geddy. And it's got these arrangements, and it's got these parts, and it's got these sounds that are Rush, man. But still Crownlands. That's not an easy thing to do. And it's not a ripoff of Rush. It's a tribute to Rush. And they've come out and said that's what this is, man. We were trying to write songs that sound like the band we love so much. And they went down to Nashville to record these things. And they actually had one of Rush's producers produce these songs, man. And when they get there, this is so cool. They get there to the studio to start recording whatever. I'm paraphrasing, but this is the gist. And Cody gets there getting ready to play drums, and don't they wheel out a kit that Neil Peart recorded on? The dude is playing Rush-inspired tracks on Neil Peart's dang drums. And these are the cool things that can happen when you're in music, man. These nutso experiences, So they recorded that song. They recorded a tune called Right Way Back. And this is vintage Rush sounding stuff, man. So if you're into Rush, and I know a lot of you cats are, and I am, not to the psychotic kind of level that a lot of people are, but I like the Rush, man. And I can recognize in these tunes, you go way back, Like you go back to Red Barchetta, and you go back to Spirit of Radio, and you go back to Free Will, and you go back to Bastille Day, like the vintage old school Rush stuff. And it sounds like those tunes. Caress of Steel, man. And kudos to Crownlands, man. I at one point in time was in touch with them about being guests on the show, which they were amenable to, and then some stuff happened, and then I changed the format, and it never really came together. But I want to give them a shout out now. It's been super fun to watch Crownlands blow up the way they have. It's inspiring and it's exciting to see, and no one is more deserving, man. They're out there taking their shot. They're out there taking their chances. They're doing cool stuff, and they can back it up with what they got, man. And so kudos to you guys. Well done. Really like the new tracks. I'll put one of them on the John Huff podcast, referenced on the pod playlist. And you can check them out. Go listen to them and listen to more Crownlands, man. They got a lot of music out there. And they'll be coming to your town whenever it's possible to come to towns again. And chances are they'll be playing with somebody really, really big, all right? Until they themselves are the really, really big band. So kudos to Crownlands. Go check that out, all right? Now, if that's not enough new music for you, I got something just a little bit off the grid. Dude, I did not know how great Serena Ryder is. Knew the radio songs, all right, over the past, whatever it is, few years, 5 years, I don't remember. Time is a blur, man. Time is just a human construct. Ram Dass will tell you that. If you close your eyes and concentrate real hard, Ram Dass might actually tell you that in your head right now. So I knew the radio songs, and I like them. I like them, and I like to play with somebody like Serena Ryder, man. That's my vibe as a drummer, okay? Although I'm starting to miss playing rock and roll. These reminiscences about Hearts and Crownlands and listening to the Dead Daisies and stuff, I'm like, kind of miss that, man. Regardless, irregardless, dig Serena Ryder's radio hits, dig that whole vibe. It's cool, but I never really went deeper than that. And in not going deeper than that, I missed out on how freaking great Serena Ryder is, man. And a lot of you who appreciate when I talk about Black Swan or Alice Cooper may not have checked out Serena Ryder either, and you need to, because she dropped a new album yesterday. Thank you, Alice Cooper, and thank you everybody who drops new albums on Friday when I'm sitting there sweating because I ain't got nothing to talk about on the podcast, man. Serena Ryder dropped an album called The Art of Falling Apart, and I thought I would check it out because you never know, man, because you never know if it might be one worth spinning. And it is, man. I had no freaking idea. How cool Serena Ryder is, man. You listen to this record and you're like, this girl is just so cool, man. She's cool, but beyond that, I had no idea what a singer she is. Like, holy cow, man. Like I talk about Glenn Hughes and I talk about Robin McCauley, these dudes who are pushing 70, who are still cranking rock and roll vocals. And I talk about people like Feist, who have control that is bewildering to me. Just ability. And Serena Ryder is one of those. And I had no idea. And I'm listening to this record and I'm just stunned. I'm stunned by how she's Feist. I'm stunned by how she's Tina Turner when she wants to be. Like, it's almost unfair for somebody to be that good. But she has a voice that has been blowing my mind since yesterday, Friday morning, when I sat down and started listening to this album. And I had no idea that Serena Ryder is so good. And mark my words, kids, this girl is absolutely amazing. And it just keeps coming back to me the more I listen to this record. It's like, this girl can sing, man. Wow, it's impressive. And I'm impressed and a little jealous, man. So I'm not going to do the whole record. Can't do it. Ain't got time. But I do want to highlight a few songs that you really should listen to, all right? Now, this record, I did a little bit of reading on the backstory just before I hit record, okay? And I like to know where it comes from, you know? Now, this is 10 tunes. They're all very short, like 3 minutes or less. Very to the point. You know, there's nothing superfluous. There's nothing extra here. It's just a bunch of really good songs. And it's got a 70s kind of vibe. And it's got like a bit of a soul kind of vibe and a bit of Motown here and there. And almost a bit of a disco feel at times. But at the same time, it's dark and sparse, you know? It's very subtle. And then just this voice, man, working over top of it. It's a great freaking record. So I'm going to point you to the opening tune, Candy, which has just got this funk soul vibe, man. It's cool how there's a retro vibe beginning to come into a lot of new music. And I'm noticing a retro 80s metal vibe coming into a lot of new music, by the way. That may scare some of you, but it's exciting for me. This opening tune, Candy, has just got a very understated bass and drums kind of 70s funk vibe to it, man. And you hear it and you go, yes, there's something so cool about this, but it's not something she's putting on, man. It's not, I don't think, like she sat down and she's like, I'm going to do this tune that's got like a 70s soul vibe and I'm going to sound cool. I think it just came out, man. She sat down with a bunch of songwriters. I learned about the process here, right? Now, first of all, this record is inspired by, it's called The Art of Falling Apart. And Serena Ryder was out there on the road just grinding hard, man. And I can tell you that the road will pound you down. Now, I've only done at the most 6 weeks out there, okay? Last time around with Sarah in Europe, we did 6 weeks and did like 35 shows in those 42 days. And it makes a mess of you, man. Just the not sleeping, just the wear and tear, just the travel, just the being up all the time. You know, being up for a couple hours at the show and then crashing down again. And then not getting enough sleep and then sort of rolling down the highway to the next place. And then being up again because you have to be up for the show and for the crowd and whatever. Shake the hands, you know, smile at the people. And that's not an effort, but it takes something out of you. It requires energy. And just the relentless wheels on the road, man. You take the heart of a traveling band, you'll never understand that all they know is the yellow line, sang Sloan. And I've had just a taste of that, okay? A month here, 6 weeks there, you know? And I get how the fatigue accumulates, how the demands accumulate, even at my little level. And nobody's there for me. They're there for Sarah. So, you know, what it is for Sarah gets amplified. And then what it gets for Serena Ryder, bigger shows, bigger crowds, more hangers-on, more demands from labels, more demands from the industry, right? And what do you do to cope? You drink. Maybe you do drugs, you know. Maybe you sleep with people. I don't know. People do stuff to manage, man. There's something called the tour black hole. And it was explained to me by the singer Gavin from the fabulous Canadian indie band The Wooden Sky. You should be listening to The Wooden Sky, kids. I interviewed Gavin for the London Groove Machine, and he's like, there's a tour black hole where you kind of get lost in it. Like you're never in the same place, and you kind of on this weird kind of hamster wheel, you know? And every night's a party because every show is an event for the people who are at it, especially if you're playing like club shows and people have access to you, right? It's like every night they want to party with the band, and so the band parties. But it's not just a one-off for the band. It's every freaking night, man. And it gets to you after a while, and so you drink to get through it, and you miss people, and the demands are on you, and there's pressure, and there's stress. Not so much for me at my level, but for Serena Ryder at her level, there is, man. And she coped with it in ways. Ways that become destructive after a while. And she's very candid about this, okay? She's an advocate for mental health. She's done the miles, man. She's done the rock and roll kind of thing, and that's a way to cope, all right? And so this record is about falling apart. This record is about how the road strips it off you, man. How the road can grind you in, you know? The road can take you places, but the road can also crush you under its wheels, man. She got a bit crushed under the wheels, and that's what this record is about. So there's a level of depth here. And I haven't explored the lyrics too deeply, you know? It's about some relationships, and it's about falling apart, man, the art of falling apart. And she has since gotten clean and sober. She doesn't drink anymore. You know, she's put a focus on her health. She's committed to not doing that kind of rigorous touring anymore. There's a way to do it that works, man, and makes sense. That keeps you healthy, that keeps you balanced, you know, and she's committed to that, and this record's about that. And the first song, Candy, is just got a great 70s funk kind of vibe. And her voice is awesome. I want to point out the tune Bus Stop. Bus Stop is probably my favorite song. It's a dark song. It's an ethereal kind of song, you know, just like keyboards in the beginning and a voice. There's a bit of Adele happening at certain times. It's weird. Tina Turner, Adele. It kind of bounces around between like an old school kind of funk vibe and a modern kind of pop vibe. But the songs work. They work together. There's nothing jarring stylistically. But this one's got more of a modern kind of sound. There's like a hip-hop groove happening. It comes in, you know. I'm picturing a dance club, but like a kind of a chill thing happening. And it's dark, and there's like neon here and there. Can you picture that? I know you guys all spend a lot of time in dance clubs like that. One time I was at a resort. And they had this kind of weird silent dancing exercise where everybody had their own headset and the room was dark except for some neon. And there were several channels on the headset that you could choose that were playing different music. And people danced together but apart silently in this club, man. It was weird and cool, and I can hear this song playing in a place like that. And there's this great little breakdown where it's just vocals and keyboard, and it's super chill, man. It's like a down, kind of chill tune. But then the groove kicks back in after that little breakdown, you know, and there's a hook in the chorus, and I can hear the crowds singing it, and when that hip-hop beat kind of comes back in, I can feel the surge of energy from the audience. It's a super cool, vibey tune, and I really dig it, called Bus Stop, right? I'm going to mention the tune Kid Gloves, which has just got this great, again, 70s funk soul vibe. It's not easy to do, man. And then the tune Better Now, which has got this John Mayer kind of vibe. You can hear in the guitar part, John Mayer. I think you can hear that in your head. You can picture that, right? But then the voice, man. And I just keep coming back to the voice, the way this girl can sing. It's so understated when it needs to be, but there's so much depth in the voice. It's smoky, it's a bit whispery, you know? It's got so much texture and grain to it. This is not easy to do, man, and it is not pure talent. It's a lot pure talent, but there's technique happening, and there's a confidence happening, you know, for a person to be able to sing that way, and it's just such a cool tune with such a cool vibe, man. This record is all vibe. And we come to the tune All the Love. And it's Katrina and the Waves. It's Walking on Sunshine. It's got that kind of upbeat, that kind of up-tempo thing happening, you know? But it's, again, there's nothing extraneous. There's nothing facetious. There's nothing exaggerated in these tunes. They're very, very simple, and the arrangements are very sparse, okay? And then the chorus comes, and it's Tina Turner. And it's Maria McKee. And it's all these people who I've talked about before who have voices that just bring me down to my knees, man. I'm amazed by people who can really sing. And Serena Ryder can really, really sing, man. And it's on this chorus. And again, I can picture the audience just whooping, just cheering when she hits that All the Love part. And it's Tina Turner, man. Not everybody can do that. And yet it's still uniquely Serena Ryder. How do they do it, man? I'm amazed by that. I'd love to play this stuff. Serena, I know you're listening and you have 100 drummers on your list, but make me 101, okay? I'm going to also mention finally that song Used to You, and it's a You Must Move song, man. That groove again, that pocket. You must move when you hear this song. What I wrote down here is vibe, vibe, vibe. Vibe has been a topic of discussion in the Sarah Smith tour van. A couple years ago when the Arctic Monkeys released their most recent record, the title of which is too complicated for me to reproduce right now. But it's again, it's weird. It's got just vibe. It's got just mojo. Super understated, super cool, man. And this Serena Ryder record has mojo. It has that vibe, man. A 70s vibe, a funk soul vibe, a modern pop vibe. But underneath it all is this vibe, man, that just runs through it. And it is so cool. And this song Used to You is just an illustration of the vibe that runs through this record. Now, this whole record, as I understand it, was written very quickly. A song a day for 10 days, you know? Not easy to do, man. Not easy to do that and to capture something the way that Serena and her team captured this album. It's inspired, man. It's cool. And I'm highly recommending the Serena Ryder record, The Art of Falling Apart. That is not one I would have listened to, man. Not before I started spinning would I really have given serious consideration to that album. And I'm glad I did. And I hope I'm expanding your horizons, man, because Serena Ryder has a voice that needs to be heard. Man, people who can sing like that and still manage to have a cool album that's got this cachet, that's got this gravitas, that's got this vibe, man. So go and listen to Serena Ryder's record, okay? And go and listen to Crown Lands. And if you're looking for some, you know, dense and uplifting spirituality, check out Ram Dass. Go listen to the Ram Dass Here and Now podcast and just get a flavor for this man and his power and his love, man. It's all about the love, and you can be pulled into the frequency of love by good music, man. Serena will take you there. Crown Lands will take you there. Even the Dead Daisies, if you're plugged in the right way. Look at that. Almost in an hour. Time for me to go, kids. Time for me to run along. I was going to tell you all about the German castles. We'll have to save that for next time. Hope you're doing okay. Hope you're doing well. Take care of yourselves, folks. Drop me a line. Let me know what you're listening to. Let me know what you think of some of this stuff. And please do give me a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. I certainly do appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon, my friends, and until then, I'll check you later. Thank you once again, gentle listener, for taking in today's show. If you want to know more about the program, go to www.john-huff.com. That's JOHN-HUFF.com and click on podcast. You can also find the show on Facebook at The John Huff Podcast. If you're an Instagram person, you can find me at JW_Huff. If you're a Twitter person, you can find me at JWSHuff. No matter where you listen to the show, please do me a big favor and leave a rating and review. Preferably a positive one. That's all the time we have for today, but I'll be back very soon. Until then, keep your wits about you and remember, good things happen when you put yourself out there. Bye for now. Maybe we should play the Rush game next.